I'm Dr. John Dabach, and I answer your relationship questions. Let's get right into the email. Dear John, my husband says he wants another child, but I don't. When I told him I'm done, he said I'm taking something away from him, and he's been distant ever since. Now I feel like I have to choose between my body and my marriage. How do you navigate something this big when there's no compromise? Megan in Nashville, Tennessee. Megan, I'm going to start by telling you something very clearly because you need a steady place to stand before you make any decisions here. You're not wrong for being done with having children, and you're not wrong for feeling the weight of what this means for your marriage. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Where couples get themselves into real trouble is when they try to turn this into a simple right or wrong conversation instead of acknowledging that this is one of the few issues in a marriage where there genuinely may not be a clean compromise. You can't have half a child. It's just not possible. You can't outsource pregnancy unless you're open to surrogacy, and you can't really negotiate your body like it's a shared asset. It's just not something you could do. So let's get honest about what's actually happening underneath the surface here. Because if you don't understand the emotional layers, you're going to end up fighting about the wrong things. When your husband says you're taking something away from him, what he's really expressing is grief, desire, a sense of loss. But the way he's saying it is turning that into blame. And blame is what's creating the distance between the two of you. Because now instead of feeling like two people facing a hard reality together, it feels like you're on opposite sides of a courtroom. He's the one who wants, you're the one who's denying. And that dynamic will destroy any chance of you navigating this well. So the first thing that needs to shift is not the decision itself. It's how both of you are holding the decision emotionally. Right now, he's positioning you as the obstacle to his happiness. And you're starting to feel like your autonomy is being threatened. And I can understand that. It's like you have to sacrifice your body or risk losing your marriage. And that's a brutal place to sit because it creates fear on both sides. His fear is, I'm going to miss out on something I deeply want. And your fear is, I'm going to lose myself or my relationship. And fear makes people rigid, defensive, distant, which is exactly what you're describing. So let's slow this down and get you grounded in a way where what actually belongs to you versus what belongs to him is the conversation, right? It's your body, your energy, your capacity to go through pregnancy, childbirth, raising another child. That's yours. Full stop. There's no shared ownership of that. And if you compromise on that out of pressure or guilt or fear of losing him, you are setting yourself up for resentment that will likely not just sit quietly in the background. It'll show up in how you parent, in how you connect, and how you feel in your own life. And eventually it'll erode the marriage away. So giving in here doesn't guarantee you keep the relationship. It often just delays the breakdown in a more painful way. Now, on the other side of that, his desire for another child, that's also real. And dismissing it or minimizing it is not going to work either, because if he feels like his dream is being shut down without being seen or understood, that loss will also turn into resentment. So the goal here is not to convince each other or force a compromise that doesn't exist. The goal is to fully understand what this desire means to each of you. Because right now, you're both reacting to the surface level, another child or not. And you're not unpacking what's underneath it. For him, it could be about legacy, about feeling like his family isn't complete, about wanting a different experience than what he had grown up with, about fear of aging or missing a chapter of life, about identity as a father. Those are very different motivations, and each one of those requires a different kind of emotional processing. And for you, being done is also layered. There's physical exhaustion, there's emotional bandwidth, financial concerns maybe, your identity outside of motherhood, the toll pregnancy took on your body or mental health, or even emotional health, or simply a deep knowing that your family is already complete. That could be possible. You need clarity on that, not to defend yourself, but to communicate yourself. Because if all he hears is no, he's going to keep pushing. But if he understands what that no is protecting, it becomes a different conversation. Now, here's where I'm going to challenge you in a way that actually helps your marriage rather than just validating your position. You don't have to agree with his desire, but you do need to make space for it. And that means being willing to sit with his disappointment without immediately trying to fix it, without trying to defend yourself or shut it down, because part of what he's doing right now is reacting to the feeling that there's no room for his experience in the decision. And when people feel that, they either get louder or they pull away. And he's choosing distance, which is often a sign that he doesn't know how to stay connected while holding on to something painful. So your role here is not to give him what he wants, but to stay emotionally available while holding your boundary. That looks like saying something along these lines. I hear how important this is to you. I see how much this matters, and I'm not dismissing it, but I also know in my body and my life that I'm done. And I need you to understand that this isn't me taking something from you. It's me being honest about what I can and can't give. That's a very different message than just no. Can we agree on that? Because what that does is it honors both realities. Now, let's talk about his distance, because that's the piece that's making this feel like a crisis, at least what I think is making this feel like a crisis. When he pulls away, it reinforces your fear that this decision might cost you the relationship. And that can make you second guess yourself or even feel pressure to reconsider. But his distance is not actually a strategy. It's an emotional reaction. He doesn't know how to process the loss and stay connected at the same time. That's hard for a lot of guys. So instead of leaning into the discomfort, he's creating space. And while that's understandable, it's not sustainable. Because distance doesn't solve this. It just delays the inevitable conversation. So at some point, and sooner rather than later, you're going to need to bring this back into the open in a way that actually invites connection rather than confrontation. And that means saying something like, I can feel you pulling away, and I get that this is hard, but I don't want us to lose each other over something we haven't fully talked through. Notice that you're not begging him to come back or agreeing to reconsider. You're naming what's happening and inviting him to stay engaged. Now, here's the hard truth that I'm not going to soften, because you need to be prepared for it. There are situations like this where couples reach an impasse. And the question becomes not who's right, but can we accept this difference and still choose each other? That's a very adult, very uncomfortable question, because it forces both of you to decide what matters more, the specific outcome or the relationship itself. And that's not something you could control for him. You can't make him choose the marriage over another child, just like he can't make you choose another child over your own limits. So what you're really navigating is not just the decision about a baby, it's a deeper test of whether your relationship can hold a fundamental difference without breaking. That requires maturity, it requires empathy, and a willingness to grieve what you're not going to have on both sides. So here's your bottom line. You don't sacrifice your body or your well-being to keep a relationship. That's not love, that's self-abandonment. But you also don't treat his desire like it's unreasonable or selfish, because that will push him further away. Your job is to stay grounded in your truth while staying connected to his experience, to communicate clearly without attacking, and to invite a conversation that's about understanding rather than winning. And if he can meet you there, if he can process his disappointment without blaming you, if he can stay engaged even when he doesn't get what he wants, then this is something you can move through together. I'll be honest with you, it likely won't be easy. But if you get through it, it will deepen the relationship. Now, if he can't, if he continues to distance, blame, pressure you, then you have a different problem on your hands. One that goes beyond this decision and speaks to how he handles unmet needs in the relationship. And that's something you'll have to take seriously. Because long term, that dynamic will show up in more places than just this, I promise you. So don't rush this. Don't make a fear-based decision, and don't carry this alone. This is a conversation that needs to be had very openly, very fully, honestly, and without shortcuts. If you have a question you want me to answer, there are directions in the description below on how to submit it for my team and me to consider for this show. And don't forget, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.